End. Final chapter cleared, trophy earned. Apparently that's good enough for a silver. Just beating this game is an achievement in and of itself. Now what happens if I exit out of it? Does it take me back to the title screen? I imagine it probably does. Yep. All right. So let's talk about this game. So what? Well, actually, let's have. What if I load it? What if I load it? Just so we have like, do we have like the wafered background, or what's going to happen if we load it? Yeah, we just load back here with the option to, I guess, gather everybody or go there. So this game has a number of good strengths to it. Number one is having Sakuraba as a composer. He's been doing this for over 3 decades, composing music, and I think this is some of his most powerful modern work. The battle themes in all of the areas are really phenomenally good. The battle theme here is memorable. Multiple of the boss themes, Water 7, Alabasta. Marineford doesn't really count because it doesn't really have a main battle theme. And Dressrosa, all of them had very strong battle themes, and there were even variations to the normal battle theme. If you have like a rare encounter with high EXP or something, they actually become more instrumental. I was curious as to what was triggering these variations in music where the battle theme would suddenly change. And it was because of the enemies being a little bit rarer in terms of EXP yield. So I thought that was a nice touch. Number two, if you're a fan of NPCs and talking with people, you will love this game. I was overwhelmed. I was happily overwhelmed when I first arrived in Alabasta. There was just so many people to talk to, and so many different ways to experience and engage with the individuals. I spent probably a good 30 to 40 minutes. I'm not even controlling the camera, by the way. It's moving on its own. I'm going to stop that. And I just spent 30, 40 minutes just walking around talking to everybody just because I was so excited to be in this area where we're re-experiencing the past. And it just kept going on and on with multiple NPCs to talk to. And each of the areas really brought that to the table. Water 7, Marineford, all of those locations really ended up covering that information, covering that area pretty well. So having multiple NPCs was a very strong plus. Number three, the combat system in this game. It has a rock paper scissors type of mechanic to it, where sword is strong against fist. Fist is strong against this gun or speed, and speed is strong against sword or technique. And the way that system works, I was a little bit worried because when you arrive on this island initially, we were all overpowered. This was before we lost our strength. So when I saw negligible difference between a super effective hit hitting me and me hitting an enemy with a super effective hit, or hitting them with a hit they should be strong against, I was worried about the game's difficulty. I heard a lot of people say this game is not very hard, and I do agree with that, but at least they're consistent with having an attack, if it's weak against an enemy, being noticeably weak against an enemy. And if you're weak against an enemy's attack, it being noticeable in that regard too. So I think that they have a good system in that regard. There's equipment with a lot of customability, but that also creates its own inherent weakness, which I'm going to discuss in my weakness section. I don't want to bounce back and forth between strengths and weaknesses right now because I'm trying to hit the game's highlights. The visuals are also great. There's a lot of beautiful backgrounds. All of the areas are so colorful. And it really gives off Dragon Quest XI vibes to me. When I first saw the game, I saw its cutscenes. It felt very much like Dragon Quest XI, and I enjoyed that quite a lot. The game has a lot of voice work, perhaps arguably a little bit too much, but there's a lot of areas that have voiceovers, and they're really, really good in that regard. Combat is extraordinarily fast. And if it's not fast enough for you, there's the option to fast forward. And I like that they have in-game, like, I guess, missions or things to do, like defeat an enemy between a certain amount of time, or protect this enemy, protect this ally from being knocked out. Because if you do those things, the reward isn't just a little bit more EXP. Oftentimes it's double to 5 times your EXP yield, if not more. It's actually insane how worth it is to do whatever the game tells you to do, just to prevent you from just mindlessly button mashing. So in that regards, it actually was pretty effective in keeping me engaged with certain fights, hoping, crossing my fingers, I'd get a fight with a certain clear condition so I could get more benefits, whether it's money or whether it's EXP. And that, I think, effectively covers the good things that I have to say about the game. Fortunately, got quite a lot of bad things to say about the game. Number one, the customization in this game, while useful, is ridiculous. To equip everything, you do it from this menu. That's fine. If you want to add to the abilities, you can't do it here. You have to go all the way to one of these campsites, which may not be as close as to where I'm standing to do this, to fuse. And if you want to unequip, you can't do that there or in your menu. If you want to unequip the abilities from that, you have to seek out a Yoisa to specifically remove that ability. To my knowledge, except for the one area in that tower at the very, very end, there is no place where you could do all 3 of those things at the exact same time. So there were multiple times during my streams where I could not fuse during the middle of my gameplay to make my characters more powerful, because I didn't have access to a campsite. Meaning I just was kind of sitting there weak, plus I couldn't unequip certain abilities from things because there wasn't a Yoisa nearby. It's 2023. All of these things, menuing should not take forever. And being able to access a menu should not take forever either. But this game would put you in areas multiple times where you just would not have access to one of these 3 menus. And it made playing the game exceedingly hard because I didn't fuse at times, and certain bosses like the Colossi became a challenge. I would save in areas where I couldn't progress until the next stream, and it turns out I locked myself in an area where I couldn't access any of these 3 menus to do integral character prep. So I would go into fights. It's so bad that I didn't even Sanji, Brooke, Frankie, multiple characters I just didn't mess with because I didn't have them nearby to ever develop them, so I just never used them. So that is a huge flaw to me. The second major impediment to this game, I'm going to discuss in a bit. I am actually extraordinarily parched. I hate to do this mid-rant, but let me get more water. I cleaned it out pretty quickly. And another thing. So part 2 of one of the major problems that this game had was the pacing. The pacing was awful. The reason the pacing suffered was because this game felt it was it felt like the game thought itself a 12 to 15 hour game, where we needed to pad in all sorts of things. We need to add backtracking. We need to have you talk to specific NPCs. We need to have you go over here and collect these things. A bunch of arbitrary things to do that would ordinarily lengthen the game that's woefully short. The problem is this is a very long game, and it does not need to do that. But yet the initial areas would constantly have you backtrack, constantly have you fetch things, and constantly have you do that. All the way from the first couple of chapters up until around chapter 5. Chapter 5 onward, the pacing improved radically because all of a sudden we weren't having to go back and do 9 million things just to complete a chapter. We were able to just do what we needed to do without a bunch of backtracking. I was floored that I was actually able to get more than one chapter done in a stream. That's how bad it was. And a lot of it had to do with the abysmal way that they would just keep introducing arbitrary things to do that had nothing to do with the story, by the way. Just things they arbitrarily introduced that we needed to do. Like we needed to collect certain we needed to find a certain admiral that had a certain key, but we needed to find 3 other keys to unlock this one lock, but then we had to get more keys, and it was just a mess. It was honestly an incredibly frustrating experience trying to navigate and get to where I needed to go in a timely and quick fashion. One of the other things that I felt was tough is that the game did not capitalize on a lot of what they should have in the major areas. The focus on Alabasta should not have been on these arbitrary side things. I get it was still a tutorial, but they spent so much time searching or trying to get to a certain place that everything else just kind of fell to the side. Water 7, which happens to be my personal favorite arc in One Piece from anything that's been done so far. I think it introduces so many interesting things. We just did nothing but sewer. Like there's so much we could have done. We could have rode a Yagura. We could have navigated one through the channels or done a bunch of different things. We ended up going down into the sewer. And then we went out of there, and then what do we do later? We go to the sewer again to go even deeper, to have access to the ship, to be able to break into Eni's lobby. And so we really didn't, get to really explore. We could have done Icebarg's mansion. We could have done a lot of different locations or places. And, and Marineford wasn't even a full section, really. Dressrosa, we already were starting at the climax, and it had the premise of Doflamingo offering the townspeople the opportunity to save themselves by hunting down and exterminating the Straw Hat Pirates, which could have been a really interesting gimmick if we were actually having to fight off the townspeople on our way to Doflamingo. And what do? They don't fight us. There wasn't even a single cutscene where a lone pair of 1 or 2 of the citizens decided they were going to save themselves by fighting us. They did nothing with the concept, despite Doflamingo introducing it at the very beginning. So that entire scene shouldn't have even happened. It didn't matter, and they didn't capitalize or do anything with that from a story perspective. The other thing that really was unfortunate about the way that Memoria worked is that while we lost our abilities, we retained our memory of the events. So a lot of the highlights or highly impactful moments of those things didn't really hit as hard. There were certain things that still did, like seeing Going Merry for the first time. I think that was a very well done establishing shot. I think seeing Ace again was very well done. The main thing that I really have a problem with is that I think they should have had the villains in Memoria remember what they were doing. I think they should have had them remember, because they're zapped with magic Memoria electric powers in their boss fights to make them more powerful. I think they should be zapped to where they retain memories of what happened up to that point in time. So Crocodile would still be doing Crocodile stuff. He wouldn't remember stuff from later on where he kind of reformed, but he would have been able to maybe do different plans, or maybe Lucci could have done something different. I don't know. I mean, they could have done so many things since they're basically writing fan fiction here. I really would have expected a little bit more from that. That's not the main thing that really brings the score down. That's just more of a me being disgruntled. I think it's hard to please everybody with this game, but really the biggest issue to me was just lack of accessibility for me being able to customize my party and do what I really needed to do to be ready for fights. The fights themselves, when you're in them, are fine, but you just have such a total lack of control over your crew, over who's in your crew. Sometimes they just insert people into your party for no reason. I end up with Usopp he's in my party right now. Why is he here? And sometimes he'll show up in random battles for no reason. It's not like there's a story reason for him to be there. It's just the game decides, hey, it's time for him to come in. And it's just it's just a very overwhelming experience. Just trying to get your party ready, multiple streams of not being able to do that. But all in all, I think if you're looking for a game that, if you are a huge fan of One Piece, if you like going around 100%ing things, if you like exploring things and looking for tons and tons and tons of hours of content, and you don't mind lots and lots and lots and lots of backtracking, this might be the game for you. But for me, I was really drawn out of the experience because I had such a total divestment. And I just became fed up and disgusted with trying to manage the fusion of everything. Like I didn't even put anything on Robin. I didn't put anything on Frankie. And there's Brooke rocking nothing. So it's just by the very end, I just realized it's going to take forever to fuse all of these things I need to. And I have to put myself in 9 million different areas to really rotate. I have to rotate running to different areas to rotate different menus. And I don't know. All in all, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. I think this game definitely has its moments, and I think it's very visually pretty. I think a Boundary Break would be fascinating, and the music is extremely memorable. I'm going to remember Wafer's theme, Water 7's theme. I'm going to remember Dressrosa's and all the battle themes in this game, as well as the somber theme that plays sometimes when Lim is in cutscenes. I'll remember all the music because the music's phenomenal, and I'll remember a lot about this game. But I would not recommend it to anybody unless you're the most die-hard of One Piece fans. Sorry for kind of rambling on, but I was kind of holding in my thoughts about this game. I mean, I'm not really holding in, but holding in, giving my ultimate thoughts until the very end. So it all just came kind of tumbling out, and some of it might have been coherent, some of it may not have been coherent. But all in all, that is One Piece Odyssey.